clear through Killarney. Now I'm back to hit you with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me solid through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Disciples of Ed talking Flyers hockey here with the Always Next Year Podcast Network. I'm your host, Rob, joined today by Steve.
Oh, man, it has been a day.
And also by our special guest, Connor from Crossing Borders. How's it going, Connor?
I'm doing awesome. Just waiting for the Flyers game in an hour and basically done nothing all day. So
It's a typical Saturday. Do nothing all day and wait for the Flyers to play at night. It's nothing wrong with that. Before we get started, you can find us on Twitter at Disciples of Ed. You can find our personals. I am at radio_Rob. Steve, where can we find you?
At Schmitty324.
And Connor, where can we find not just your personal, but also your Crossing Borders account?
well, my Crossing Borders account is my personal account. So it's at Connor10 TEN. And you can find everything there for Crossing Borders and for myself.
That's weird. I could have sworn you had a separate account for Crossing Borders. I thought I saw it up there somewhere. But definitely give Crossing Borders a listen. Where can we find Crossing Borders as far as the podcast hosts that have it up?
It's on all the channels now. It took a little while to get to all of them, but it's on. You can find it on Google. You can find it on Anchors, where I record and post. And you can just type in Crossing Borders basically on any of your podcast networks and you'll find it.
And you definitely should give them a listen. Hit that subscribe button for them. Show them some love. Give them some reviews, some ratings on Apple Podcasts. They're certainly a very good show. Connor, you do a great job running that show. I've listened to it. I actually drive for Amazon, so I listen to podcasts as I'm driving, and I've listened to all of your shows. You do a very good job with that. So if you're listening to this one, definitely follow them, subscribe to them, give them ratings, give them reviews. They're definitely very deserving of that. And in the meantime, you can also find Disciples of Ed on just about every podcast hosting site as well. You can find us on Spotify, Spreaker. You can find us on Google Podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on SoundCloud. I think I listed them all. All right, so anyway, let's get into it here. Flyers hockey, the hottest team in the NHL, 8 consecutive wins. They're in a virtual tie for first place. Who would have thought, with the Washington Capitals atop Metropolitan Division? Washington holds first place on a technicality, being the regulation and overtime wins over the Flyers. The Flyers have a few more shootout wins in there. But the Flyers 3-0-1 against the Capitals in the regular season and have handled them pretty easily the last 2 times down at the Capital One Arena down there. And I want to start off by talking about the job that Alain Vigneault has done with this team. Because, I mean, aside from a few free agent pickups, they brought in Hayes, they brought in Niskanen, they brought in Justin Braun, and a couple other guys in the offseason. Virtually, it's kind of the same roster that Dave Haxtell and Scott Gordon had last year. And yet, they've been excellent. So, do you guys... Where do you guys have AV, I guess, ranking amongst the Jack Adams candidates? Do you think that he should be a front runner to win the award? Connor, we'll start with you.
At the beginning of the season, obviously, you could make the argument no, because we did start slow in typical Flyers fashion. But as the season's progressed, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to argue. I mean, you look around the league, you look at some of the other candidates who might be up for it. It's hard not to argue for him because now, of course, we're looking at it now. We're 3/4 of the way through the season, and suddenly the national media is finally recognizing the Flyers, finally recognizing Alain Vigneault, and finally recognizing just Philadelphia in general, as they've done year in and year out with every sports team when they somehow surprise everybody. But I mean, I guess yes, but at the same time, I think there's individual coaches who have done a lot better. I think that we can't undershoot how important Mike Yo and Michelle Therrien have been. I mean, they're behind the scenes guy, but you look at where the power play and the penalty kill are. I mean, that has a lot to do with what Mike Yo has done and a lot to do with what Michelle Therrien has done. And same with the defenseman. The defense is the best Flyers defense I've seen in years. Like, I can't even remember the last time we had a defense looking this good and a penalty kill looking this good and a power play looking this good. And it's such a
The power play hasn't looked good at all until just recently.
Until recently, I guess. Recency bias, that's my bad.
I got you, but that's why I agree with everything you're saying besides the Michelle Therrien praise.
With that being said, though, the power play has been excellent over the past couple months. It was the beginning of the season where it was struggling, and then they switched some things up, and they tactically
the switching things up was switching Giroux and Voracek back to their usual spots. Like,
which is
why
what we
did
were
it take
talking
so
about for
long?
a while.
Yes, it's just why did it take so long? Were you waiting for us to be in this playoff hunt to like finally go, okay, now we kick it in? I don't know. Maybe like Michelle Therrien is more woke than I am, but at the same time, like, we have been saying this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Move them back to their regular spots. Power play will click.
Absolutely. So Connor, you're kind of saying that while AV's done a nice job, he has a lot of I guess his assistants have a lot of the responsibility in the team's turnaround is what you're getting at here.
I'm of the belief that there's more behind the scenes stuff than what we see, but we're just gonna praise Elaine Viano because obviously you never sit there and see the praise land on the laps of the assistant coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that because AV, when you look at a coaching staff, you always see the head coach as being the face of that coaching staff. For instance, when you look at the Eagles, you see Doug Peterson, and then guys like Jim Schwartz and Deuce Staley and all that are kind of come behind Doug Peterson. But Doug Peterson is the face of that coaching staff. If you look in Kansas City, because we have Steve on the show, Andy Reid is the face of that coaching staff out there. You hear about the guys who are working under him, but you don't really, hear a whole lot about them. But with that being said, comparing AV to some of the coaches around the league who deserve Jack Adams' consideration, I don't really know who else is up there. I mean, maybe David Quinn with the job that he's done with the Rangers, a team that was expected to be a bottom feeder this year, and they're contending and could potentially make playoffs this year.
I'll step in if you don't mind, Rob, because I was just on the NHL.com looking at it, and they have like a tracker, and they put votes in. I'll give you the top three, then it might open better discussion. Mike Sullivan of the Penguins, John Tortorella of the Blue Jackets, and Travis Green of the Vancouver Canucks were the ones with the most votes based on the media.
I can't really argue with that. I can't really argue with it. I mean, I can argue against Mike Sullivan. I'm, again, sorry. I have been drinking, so I'm going to step in unapologetically, but also apologetically.
Steve in his natural state.
Yeah, Mike Sullivan, he has dealt with like these injuries, sure. Travis Green has done wonders with that Vancouver team, but Quinn Hughes is probably going to win the Calder Trophy, so he got a gem there. Sorry. Who was the other guy?
John Tortorella.
Yes. And
Torch shouldn't be in there because Columbus, if you look at it, has a losing record. They just have a whole lot of pity points, which is why they're in the playoffs right now.
A ton of pity points.
Yeah, they really do. But at the same time, now he's got them in there, so I can understand him being in there, but like I would push him away as well as I'm pushing away Mike Sullivan. I would probably keep Travis Green in there. I would agree with you, Connor, about Quinn with the Rangers, and then another guy I'm thinking of is Dave Tippett with the Oilers.
Yeah, Dave Tippett's done a nice job, especially given that they literally have two guys doing all the scoring for them, and then it's kind of a crapshoot after that up there in Edmonton. So Dave Tippett definitely does deserve some consideration as well.
Yeah.
And I think
But
another guy. I'm sorry.
No. You got another guy that I'm not thinking of, so go with it.
Oh, I was just going to go with Bruce Cassidy up in Boston. I mean, it's a very talented team up there, but he's got them. They have the most points in the NHL, so he definitely has to be getting some consideration there.
No. Fuck him. Fuck Boston.
But right, well, we know how you feel now.
Yeah, but no, AV should be in I would say the top 5 of Coach of the Year candidates at least.
Yeah, I would definitely put him ahead of Mike Sullivan. I mean, the Penguins have done well, but since they made all those moves at the deadline, they've kind of been sliding. I mean, they lost this afternoon to Washington, so I mean, they're kind of on a bit of a downward spiral because they really shaked up their team at the deadline. I mean, I know it was the bottom half of their team, but I mean, if you shake up the bottom of half of your team and it's having this much of an impact, I mean, you got to think that has to weigh a bit on the coach as well. And I mean, like you said, I agree with Travis Green. He should be up there. Torts is getting a lot of pity points because they have been destroyed by injuries since almost day one. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to argue. I mean, Dave Tippett, you could put him up there because he's struggling with the Oilers, like always. And then John Cooper's another one who's up there with Tampa Bay, but they're always up there. So, I mean, yeah, you can definitely put Vienno up there in the top 5, maybe even the top 3, honestly.
I would say top 3 for Alain Vigneault. Another guy who could get some consideration. He won't win it because he's only been there for part of the season, and I kind of took a shit on him when Vegas hired him, but because I didn't like the firing of Gallant. But Peter DeBoer, they've been great ever since they hired him. He's not going to win it, but he's the job that he's done there. He's certainly deserving at least of some maybe top 5 to top 7 consideration there.
Yeah, he will definitely be up there, but at the same time, it's not out of the realm of the NHL to give basically an interim head coach a Jack Adams trophy. But at the same time,
especially when it's Vegas.
Yeah, and their whole firing of Gerard Gallant didn't even really make sense. I feel like they could still be producing like they are under that coach. It was a very strange firing, and it's not the first time for Gallant, but at the same time, it's maybe there's more in the back office that we're not seeing. I don't know, but at the same time, it's working out for them, so we'll see them in the playoffs maybe.
Well, speaking of Vegas, I'll use this as a nice little segue here. The odds makers out in Vegas have the Flyers as the favorites. Yes, you heard that correctly. The favorites to win the whole damn thing, the Stanley Cup this season. I'm kind of pumping the brakes a little bit. I mean, I think they have a very good shot to do it. But, when you get to the playoffs, you have teams like Pittsburgh turns their game up. Washington turns their game up. Tampa turns their game up. It's not going to be regular season hockey. It's going to be a whole different animal. And some of these younger players, the Farabees and whatnot of the world, aren't all that exposed to it. What are you guys' thoughts? And Steve, we'll start with you this time on the Flyers getting some love from the Vegas odds makers.
Well, somebody had responded to that tweet on Twitter. I think it's from Money Puck. What it looked like this exact day last year, and the Blues were the 3rd highest. I think it was either San Jose or maybe Pittsburgh. I don't remember. Tampa Bay maybe was. So
you're saying that they might be onto something.
I am saying that they're onto something, but at the same time, the game's still have to play out. But it's just I have never felt more confident in March of a Flyers team than I have this year. I would say the last time was probably the year after we lost the Stanley Cup. And we know how that turned out.
Yeah, it turned into a carousel of goaltenders come playoff time. I remember that.
Fuck you, Peter Laviolette.
Oh, man. Connor, how do you feel about this love that the Flyers are getting from Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pump the brakes too, because, I mean, when you watch the games and the announcers are talking, Now, obviously, there's some bias in some of the announcers that I get up here in Canada because I don't always get the Philadelphia announcers. But it's like the Flyers have been playing playoff hockey since basically since the before, like about the All-Star break. So they're sitting there and they're saying they're playing it like it's like playoff hockey. So if that's us playing playoff hockey, and some of these teams still haven't turned it up, and we played Washington the other night and won, well, then that's scary to think. So, I'm going to pump the brakes only for the fact that, we just hit a nice streak. Who's to say there isn't another cold streak to come? Who's to say there isn't something that holds us back a little bit and then we start losing the odds again?
Flyers.
Exactly. But I can side with you, Steve, in the fact that I haven't felt this good about a Flyers team since probably the Flyers team in 2012 that came back from 3-0 down against the Bruins. I think that was the most confidence I last had in a Flyers team when we made that 3-0 comeback against Boston, and then 3-0 again in Game 7. But there,
Great
I don't
memory.
think
Thanks for taking me down memory lane there. That was a special time.
It was a very special time.
How good we feel.
Exactly. I have never felt so good, and I feel a little bit better than that time because we have Carter Hart, not Michael Leighton. So there is a feeling better.
The biggest point proved. Thank you.
If Carter Hart can get it together on the road, then I think we are really deadly. We are really scary, and come playoff time, doesn't matter if we've been playing playoff hockey since the All-Star break or if we've been playing it since Game 1, which we definitely have not, then we'll be scary. But it's getting Carter Hart and getting this team comfortable on the road and being able to win on the road. And our last road game was what we played. Well, the Capitals was on the road, and then the Rangers before that. So, we haven't had too much challenges on the road since the discussion of Carter Hart's struggles on the road. But, we're bound to get a bit more in the next few games. So I'm interested to see what happens and if they use Carter Hart on the road, because he's liked to go with Elliott on the road recently. So, and that can't continue in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I think it was Elliott got the start on whatever night it was that they're down in Washington. Wednesday night they're down in Washington. Elliott got the start in that game, but Carter Hart got the start up in Madison Square Garden on Sunday.
But let's be fair. Chris Kreider is out and stuff. That killed the Rangers. The momentum of that weekend was shot with that injury.
Yeah, but they also scored 3 goals against us, and I think that was just like a momentum shift that the Flyers still staved off, which is something you want to see going into the playoffs. Like, even if you're up 5-1 or whatever it was, and then you can still like stave them off, like. Even if it gets to 5-3, you're still able to say, "Fuck you guys, we're not losing this game."
See, I want to talk about that for a second because, you've seen it so many times that a team that gets hot and goes on a winning streak, they, at the end of that streak, they kind of show signs that they're going cold and the streak is coming to an end. I remember that 10-game winning streak the Flyers had a couple of years ago. The last maybe game or so, you could see signs that they were kind of slowing down a little bit. And that could have, a lot of people probably took that on Sunday as a sign that maybe this team's going to slow down a little bit. The penalty kill, which had been excellent, gave up 3 goals. They almost blew a 5-1 lead. It ended up being 5-3. And you know what they did? They completely rebooted. They came out. They looked excellent against Washington. They looked excellent the other night against Carolina. And that's a sign of a team that has great leadership, is the ability to bounce back from a bad ending to a win and come out and win the next couple of games after that. So that to me is one of the huge differences between this Flyers team and the Flyers teams of years past.
I'm sorry, I was going to interrupt you, but I was waiting for you to finish your thought. But you just said great leadership
I did.
From the Flyers.
I did. It feels so good to say
is
that.
Still the captain.
It feels so good to say
Jacob
that.
Voracek is still an alternate captain. Sean Couturier is an alternate captain.
I think it has a lot more to do with some of the pieces they brought in too. Like look at
Niskanen.
Grant. Look at what Grant's been. Look at what Niskanen's been. Like you look at Niskanen and Provorov both surpassed their points for last year like 10 games ago. And so I mean, like and then Braun paired with Hag and what Hag's doing. And I mean, a lot of people are saying that maybe Hag's playing the way he's playing because of Oscar Lindblom, his good buddy, and he's playing for him. He's playing with more heart because of that. But I think there's a lot to do with Justin Braun in there too. Like a lot of people judge those two pickups, but I think they were massive and much needed pickups.
They were, and you know what? I critiqued them so much, and I can admit I was wrong. Niskanen, far beyond my expectations of what he would have brought to this team.
I liked the Niskanen move, but I was on the fence with the Braun move. I was very, very skeptical of the Braun move. The only reason I hated the Niskanen move was the cap we kept of Gudas's. That was the thing that got my head spinning.
You know what's funny?
As well.
You know what's funny? I saw someone on Twitter yesterday brought up the Niskanen for Gudas trade, and there was like a link back to the tweet that the Flyers put out when the trade happened, and just looking at all the reactions, everybody's like, "Oh my God, this is terrible! What are you doing, Flyers? You're setting us back 10 years." And little would they know, just a few months later, it ended up being such an excellent trade. Gudas has been, pretty. I mean, I don't watch the Capitals a whole lot, but
he's been a healthy scratch with them.
Yeah, he's not doing a whole lot. And meanwhile, Niskanen's been playing at, I don't know if I would say an elite level, but he's helped out Provorov so much. It's really helped Provorov mature into a stud defenseman.
I would go beyond that and say that he has not only helped Provorov, but he's helped this whole defense.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
so much more stability.
Him and Braun. Braun, my problem was giving up like the draft capital that we gave up for him. I wasn't agreeing with, but at the same time, he has proved me wrong. But both of them, with their experience and their knowledge and everything, like the defense, they have helped. Like that, I would say that like beyond Mike Yo, Mike Yo. Niskanen and Braun have helped Sanheim and Myers to be able to mesh so well.
Mm-hmm.
I think like that's where I think it goes beyond coaching, and it's like these players with experience.
Absolutely. This defense was just so young. I mean, our veteran before this was Andrew McDonald, who couldn't.
Oh no! Don't do that to me.
No, we won't go too into it. But like, you look at last year's defense, and that was basically who you would call our veteran on the line, and he was garbage. He was pure garbage. Terrible. Like we're eating dead money for the next 2 years just to make sure that he isn't.
I don't care that we're eating money. He's not on the team anymore. Oh God! All right, Connor, you're making me do a shot. Keep going.
Yeah, but yeah, like I mean, like you just said, like this goes beyond coaching. This is Matt Niskanen and Justin Braun are so hugely important, and I think there's some people who still don't even realize how hugely important they've become to this defense, because his defense is young and they're making it so that there's some really tough decisions to be made this offseason. Matt Niskanen's a free agent. I want to say there's a couple others on the defensive line who are coming up in the next year or two.
I think Niskanen signed for another year. Braun's a free agent.
Braun's a free agent. Yeah, Braun's a free agent.
But also the real question is, what do you do with Ghost?
Seattle.
Man, no, well, now see, I'm on the fence.
That's next year. That's not this year. That's next year.
But I'm on the fence because, his contract's not bad. I think you have to leave one of those bad contracts out. No contract looks bad this year right now, except for probably Andrew McDonald's dead money. But let's be serious. That
doesn't look bad. The Andrew McDonald doesn't look bad right now because he's not on the team.
It's because it's dead money, okay? I'm thinking like I've said it and I've been saying it, and I think it should stay this way, is that the Jacob Voracek contract has to be left out there for them to take. because I still think that one will age poorly. It's that one or JVR. One of those two
We've
has to be
been saying
protected.
I feel like Flyers fans have been saying the Jake Voracek contract looks bad, but at the same time, he has been producing. I mean, not necessarily this year. I am of the opinion that he has been producing equivalent to his contract.
Steve, I know you've been drinking, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here, but he is our second highest paid player.
Yes,
Just
I know
think
that.
him
I know
for a minute. You think he's playing as the second best player on this team right now? You're going to tell me that right now?
Recently, he kind of is, but at the same time, it's not. You're thinking recency bias, all right, Connor? You're thinking recency bias.
And
When
to
he
be
got
fair,
that today.
to be
When
fair, if he's not the
should be-
second best player on the team, it's because the guys around him are playing so well. You know, Kevin Hayes is playing so well. Giroux's playing really well lately. Couturier's playing very well. Konecny's playing very well. So if he's not the second best player on the
into a debate with Connor right now, though.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
how
man.
can you just throw out the Gostisbehere deal or what he's making $4 million? Like, we should be able to trade him in some form or fashion, get
Yes.
something back for him. Like, if you're giving up one of those bad.
At this point, I am fully okay with trading Ghost for something draft pick wise, defensive wise, like more of a defenseman. Even if you're getting a lesser talent, like comparing offense to defense, but also getting draft pick with it. But
And
What's
think that's
crazy
what
is
you-
that I've tended to completely even forget that Gostisbehere exists because he hasn't been playing and they've been
Hate him.
doing so well.
because you hate him.
I do hate him.
Fuck you.
I like Gostisbehere.
It's a solid
I honestly
fucking-
like Gostisbehere. I mean, I don't like for me. I wouldn't mind having him on the team if there's this way to fit him in there. But every time you fit him in there, he makes the line worse. So at this point, you got to move him. And as the trade deadline passed this year, I was like, why have you not moved him? Like, yes, I agree with you, Steve. We're gonna have to take a lesser talent. And we have to accept that because you're not going to get what Ghost was worth 2 years ago or a year ago when we should have moved him. When he was at the top of his game, should have moved him.
Sorry. My emphatic no was to when we should have moved him because we should not have moved him then.
I think we should have moved him last year at the break or
I
at the
strongly
trade deadline.
disagree with you.
Do you?
I do. I do.
Well,
Oh man.
But see, like I mean, you could do a whole episode on the Seattle team and what we're gonna do because we have you can protect 10 players and we have about 20 guys we want to protect.
I've looked at it. Honestly, I have nothing else to do at work when it's slow, so I've looked at it. And there's 3 players we could lose. It's Jake Voracek. There's 4. It's Jake Voracek, James Van Riemsdyk, Shane Gostisbehere, and Scott Lawton.
Scott Lawton, you would lose Scott Lawton.
No.
Based off the parameters so far.
Well, Scott Lawton's a free agent at the end of this year, an RFA at the end of this year, so we have a choice to make with him anyways.
If you look at Scott Lawton's stats, because he missed some time with injury, if you expand it out over an 82-game pace, he's on pace, or he would be on pace to have damn near 25 goals. Like, people don't realize how well Scott Lawton has played when he's been in the lineup.
He's riding a really high shooting percentage.
He is, but he's still played very well.
I don't necessarily think that a team that sees Jake Voracek, James Van Riemsdyk, or Shane Gostisbehere being available and choosing Scott Lawton. No offense to Scott Lawton.
No.
I fucking love Scott Lawton. I hope he is finally the new Mike Richards, quote unquote, like they told us when he was drafted, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. Like, if you're dangling Voracek and Van Riemsdyk out there, and even Ghost out there, like Ghost could be a good piece to a new team. Voracek could be a good leader on a new team. JVR you could do whatever you want with him.
I would never call Jake Voracek a leader.
I think like if you're talking a brand new
Points leader,
franchise,
maybe.
a brand new franchise, I think that you when you're picking from the pick of the litter, like everyone blocked you of their 10 best players, and
Yeah.
Jake Voracek's left out there. I think that's one of those
Kidding me?
pieces
Jake
that could be a good leader.
Wait,
See, the
what?
things that I've heard about Voracek from listening to different interviews, he's a great locker room guy. That doesn't mean he's a great leader, but he's a great locker room guy. You know, he's always someone who's joking around. He's loose. According to Kevin Hayes, he's a DJ in the locker room. You know, he plays all the music and stuff like that. That's a hugely important thing for a team to have if they're going to be out there. You know, if they want to go out and win games, they need a guy who can keep the locker room loose like that. That's very important. That doesn't mean that he's a leader, though.
All right, conspiracy theory. Kevin Hayes coming in, kind of like trying to like shuffle things up, make things more loose. He helped Jake Voracek be more of a leader in the locker room. And outside of it, we all know Jake Voracek outside of the locker room, you know. He's honest.
Uh-huh.
So,
Very honest.
not
Not afraid to drop a few F-bombs in interviews, as I learned on a personal level.
so that's what I'm thinking. Like Kevin Hayes may have been the perfect get to get Jake Voracek loose.
Could be onto something there.
Yeah, you definitely could be onto something. But I mean, at the end of the day, you look at what Vegas did and some of the pieces they got. No one would have ever thought that. I never thought that year when that team was put together that they'd be anything right away or anything anytime soon. And they became something. And that, like, leaving those pieces out there, like a Jacob Voracek, or kind of negotiating with the Seattle franchise and say, we'll leave these two out there for the picking, but you leave a bunch of these guys alone. But we can't protect them kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, those trades, yeah.
So I think that'll end up happening. Like, even if we trade Ghost, even if we lose Ghost and we trade Ghost and say, don't touch any of our players and we'll leave these other two guys out there that you can pick either of them, but we'll trade you Ghost to make it only those two people that you go after.
Oh, yeah, that's where they take Derek Grant because we signed him.
I think Derek Grant, like, I think you keep, if anything, Nate Thompson. Derek Grant can stay around. Derek Grant should stay around.
No way we extend Nate Thompson.
Yeah,
no, he's there for
just
the
a rental.
Yeah,
he's just a rental.
And hopefully he's the 13th forward when we go into the playoffs.
Hey, to be fair though, Nate Thompson,
To be fair,
he took a couple bad penalties in that Rangers game. I think the Rangers actually scored on both of those power plays. But he did come back. I think he gained them some momentum on Wednesday night by fighting Tom Wilson. He got his ass kicked in the fight, but, you know, sometimes you need the guy to step out there and do that. We remember back from 2010, LaPerriere did that a few times to kind of get momentum back on the Flyers side. You need that guy, that veteran leader who can go out there, and he's not going to score you any goals. He's not going to put up many points, but he can say if you're not playing that well, if the team's in a little bit of a funk, he can go out there and he can find a dance partner and do that to get some momentum on your side. So that's what I like about Nate Thompson.
Yeah, but Nate Thompson's real game is winning face-off and killing penalties, and we already have that.
He's more of a placeholder. I mean, we got so many young guys coming up that Ron Hextall has drafted and lined up for us. He's just a placeholder. And
Crazy
eventually,
Ron Hextall.
It's only for the farm system he left us with, and you know we have to praise that because
I
the
know.
Ed Wade
That's
of
why I
all
say-
that's worth praising.
Hey,
All right, so while we're talking
Ron
about Nate
Hextall
Thompson,
said to-
though, can we talk about
Tom-
the performance
fuck
of
Nate Thompson.
come on, man. All right. Seriously, while we're talking about these guys, the bottom two lines, the third and fourth line, have been a huge part of the Flyers successively, and it's been even better ever since they made those deadline deals. And Derek Grant he's already made his presence known. He went out there and he had a couple points on Sunday against the Rangers. He had another point, I believe, on Wednesday night in Washington, and I'm not sure if he had a point in the Carolina game, but he's played very well. So
You have like 5 points in 4 games, maybe 5 games. But at the same time, touche, Rob. I apologize for trying to dissuade you from going to this.
I mean, come on. This is a team that rolls 4 lines deep, and if you're going to win in the playoffs, you need to be able to roll 4 lines deep. So, guys, let's talk about the importance of the third and fourth line. And Connor, we can start with you this time. How important has it been that those 2 lines have been playing so well?
Oh, it's been vital. I mean, when you look at it at the playoff teams and the other teams who were most likely going to meet in the playoffs, they're deep. I mean, we watched the Tampa Bay Lightning traded a first round pick away for a perennial third line player in Barclay Woodrow from San Jose. So that just goes to show how important. And when you see Tampa Bay making a move like that, that just shows how important it is and how crucial it is to have that third line and that fourth line and have that nine guys and the 12 guys. I mean, and like we've seen it with Derek Grant. Derek Grant's out there and he's doing exactly what we thought he was going to do. He's come exactly as advertised. Same with Nate Thompson. I know that we don't need to get too far into him, but like now you look like Joel Farabee just got brought back up and he's going on to the second line and Scott Lawton's being pushed down to the third line tonight. Like that's great. The way that you can move those pieces around and they're all interchangeable anywheres in the lineup. And you know that they're going to bring something to any line that they're on, except maybe the fourth line. But the fact that we are 3 deep and we can interchangeably move those top 3 lines and top 9 guys speaks volumes to the team that we have and the potential push that we can make towards the playoffs, because you see it in all the teams that go into the playoffs that you can't be afraid to play that third and that fourth line. You can't have that first and second line playing 25, 30 minutes a night. So when you are able to put that third and fourth line out there, the third line for 12 to 15 minutes, the fourth line for even 8 to 10 minutes, that is huge for the top 2 lines and for the power play and penalty kill units.
Yeah, and it's really been the third line that's, especially on Thursday night against Carolina. I mean, the first goal was Provorov, assisted by Lawton and Grant. After that, Raffel assisted by Pitlick and Lawton. And then the third goal, Abe Kubel assisted by Nate Thompson. So 3 of those 4 goals, you know, those bottom lines were the ones that are contributing offensively. And Abe Kubel also with a goal, I think it was he scored a power play goal against the Rangers back last Friday, and he scored again, I believe. Was it Wednesday night that he had a goal?
Can't remember.
Doesn't matter. Nicholas Abe-Kubel is the man.
No, but Lawton had a goal on when Lawton and Pitlick both had goals on Wednesday night. So yeah, those bottom 2 lines have been huge for the Flyers over the last few weeks, really ever since they've been on their hot streak. And Steve, you were the one that I think before the trade deadline, you were pinpointing Derek Grant as a target that the Flyers should be after. And credit where it's due, man. You were point on, and he's been excellent ever since he came over.
I do believe I said it was like, yeah, like we'll end up just getting Derek Grant. So it was like kind of like a wash off, like this is what we're gonna do, but at the same time, man, has he been perfect?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you weren't bringing him in to take up first or second line place, which Flyers Twitter thought we needed someone to put up there. But I mean, like this team is exactly that, a team. Like, no, we don't have one player who stands out as that sniper and that lead goal scorer for us. We have like 7 or 8 guys who have 15, 14 plus goals. Like that's fine. You can go in and have that. That's probably even better than having Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin score everything for you. It's probably better to have that depth and to have that depth in scoring big time.
I am still wet over his fucking skate pass to Kevin Hayes.
Oh, that was beautiful. Well, first of all, your boy Knack with the presence of mind to get the puck to the net, and then Derek Grant's sticking out his skate and knocking it over to Hayes for the goal. That was just a thing of beauty all around.
God, it was the sexiest hockey play I think I've ever seen in my life. Okay.
Sexier than the Michigan? Sexier than some of these shootout goals that Giroux has scored?
Okay, yeah, you're right. From here on here, there was that behind the back, like turn around backhander by Giroux against the Blue Jackets.
Oh,
But,
that was the filthiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
yes, filthiest, sexiest, sluttiest thing I've ever seen in hockey. But,
Oh man.
but yeah, that Derek Grant thing is like it's shot towards him. We immediately like skate pass back. Oh god, I'm hard.
That
thinking
was
about
But it's not even just for me. It's not even just Derek Grant. Like the importance of Pitlick to this team, it can't be like before Grant came along. Now that Grant came along, Pitlick kind of took a back seat. But I mean, it's like Pitlick is a vital piece. He's another person who's going to be a free agent this offseason.
Well,
I think same with
it.
Obi
Connor, are you
Kubel.
trying to say that I am not a Tyler Pitlick fan? Because I fucking love that dude.
Hey, of the three of us,
Imagine-
I'm the one who owns a Tyler
imagine-
Pitlick game use stick.
Just imagine Tyler Pitlick, Scott Lawton, Nicholas Aubé-Kubel. That's your fourth line. Imagine that.
That's a scary fourth line heading into the
It's
playoffs.
the scariest fourth line I've heard of since like the fucking bullshit of the Islanders throw out that shouldn't be as good as they are.
I can
What? Clutterbuck, Martin, and Zizekas? Yeah. Fuck that shit. This one would have skill.
Yeah, and if you haven't paid attention, those Islanders, I don't know what they're doing, but they're playing like absolute dog shit of late. I think they're only 2 points up in the playoffs, and the Rangers have games in hand on them. So a bit of a mess going on up there in Brooklyn/Long Island, but we care not about that here because our Flyers are fighting for first place in the Metro. So, but
We'll tie it all again tonight.
a big hurdle that they're going to have to overcome. The loss of James Van Riemsdyk injured Wednesday night in Washington, broken hand. I believe they said 4 to 6 weeks, which means he would be back in time for the playoffs, hopefully. But how big of a loss, and Steve, we'll start with you this time. How big of a loss is JVR?
It is a big loss, but at the same time, it's not because of, like we discussed, the depth of this team. Joel Farabee can fill in for him at even strength. Derek Grant can fill in for him on the power play. Other than that, where do you need to fill in for him? 5v5, Joel Farabee. If not, Derek Grant. But that's not to say that JVR wasn't a contributing factor to this team. He was. He's very good. But at the same time, we're so deep that this is not a big loss. This is not like a Claude Giroux loss. This is not a Jacob Voracek loss or a Travis Konechny loss or a Sean Couturier loss.
Or Kevin Hayes' loss?
Touche. Thank you.
Just had to finish out the list there.
Thank you. But yeah, like, this team can get through this. And then when he comes back, hopefully they have Alain Vigneault has the mindset of like, okay, we did so well with Joel Farabee that we can still play him. And then Nate Thompson, sorry. Sure, we spent a 5th round pick on you, but you're the 13th guy now. So it sucks, but at the same time, we can get through it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Connor, how do you feel about the JVR injury and the potential impact it could have on the team?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Steve on all the points that he made there. I think that he's replaceable at 5v5, and he's replaceable on the power play unit. Like we said, the depth of this team it's impressive, and that makes it so 1 or 2 injuries doesn't hurt us too badly. And like you said, as long as it's not one of the true top 6 guys on the team, it doesn't hurt us that much. But losing a guy like a Giroux or a Konechny, it could be a lot. It could hurt us a lot more. But JVR is very streaky in his play. So having a guy who's streaky in his play, we have a Derek Grant who can replace that. We have a Joel Farabee who can replace that, who are both in their own right streaky players. Although Grant is 5 points in 5 games, but generally streaky players in their own method of playing. So, I mean, yeah, it sucks for Joel Farabee that he'd be going back down there again. But I mean, like we said, the farm system is equally deep to players that we have playing on the roster right now. So some of those guys are bound to get their moment next year because we're not going to be able to lock down all the UFAs and RFAs we have. So they're bound to get their opportunities. It just isn't going to happen this year because it's important we have the right people in place this year to make this final push.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I'm going to echo the same sentiment as you guys. While I do think that JVR is an important part of the team and he had been playing well of late along with the rest of the guys, he's replaceable. I mean, they immediately when he went down, they brought Farabee up. I'm a big Farabee guy. I have been since day one. And the numbers aren't going to show it. If you look at it, I believe it's 7 goals and 7 assists, or at least that was the numbers when he came up. And so he hasn't exactly been racking up high point totals, but just by the eye test, watching him play, he's played well ever since. He had a rough stretch within his first maybe 15, 20 games out there. But after that, he's played very well. I was out there. He had a 2-goal game against Colorado. And Colorado is a very good opponent. They defend well. They're a tough team to score against. And he went out there and he netted 2 goals against them. He's played well against good teams. He's played well the other night against Washington, played well against Carolina. You know, he's no slouch. He's going to be able to stand up to the type of competition that we're going to be facing in the playoffs and down the stretch in the regular season. So I have all the faith in the world in Joel Farabee to adequately fill what we'll be missing from James Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Farabee isn't a sexy option by any stretch of the imagination. But, I mean, if you're filling in on that second line with Hayes and Konechny, you're probably going to be about as good off as you possibly can be, and you're going to still produce and you're going to put up some points. Alain Viano's basically giving him the golden opportunity in moving Lawton off of that line and putting him up there. So that shows that he has a lot of faith in him, just like you do, Rob. And I mean, no, he hasn't been the world's sexiest option this year, but it is his first official run at the NHL. So I mean, by next year, the jitters are gone. He's had the opportunity to play in the NHL. I think you'll see a much improved Farabee next year, and maybe even a much improved Farabee down this stretch with that he's replacing JVR in.
All right, so Connor, you had a couple other points here that you wanted to hit on, I believe.
No, I didn't have any more points.
You don't have anything else? All right, Steve,
No.
do you have anything else?
Just watch the Western Conference wild card. That's all I had. I can't really expand on it at this point.
Well, that's definitely going to be a fun race, and I'm going to take a look at that actually right now since I can get my NHL app up and running here. Oh, man, that's going to be fun. We got Vancouver, Nashville, both 76 points. Vancouver with 67 games played, Nashville 68. They're tied with Winnipeg, who's also got 68, but they've played 69 games. And then right there, you have Minnesota at 75 and Arizona at 74, and those two, respectively, with 69 and 68 games played as well. And then you have Chicago is kind of hanging around, although they suffered a big loss last night at Detroit, which is, you know, the most winnable game in all of hockey at Detroit.
Yeah.
So they're 6 points back, and they have 68 games played. So they're kind of hanging around, but you know, at the same time, not a serious threat, but Winnipeg, Minnesota, Arizona, all 3 teams on the outside looking in. And all 3 teams with a very real chance, if they can just get on a little bit of a winning streak down the stretch, they could snag one of those wild card spots there. So that'll be a fun race to watch.
If we ignore...
Oh,
go ahead.
No, Con, you start talking.
If we ignore that they start playing at 11 o'clock at night, well, probably 10 o'clock your guys' time, I would love for the Flyers to be in the Western Conference right now. We'd be studs against some of those teams. I mean, the Western Conference, as fun as it is to watch, some of those teams shouldn't even be in it. Some of those teams shouldn't even
be second in the conference, right?
Yeah, I think
third
we'd be
behind St. Louis and Colorado.
And they're beatable. We could beat those 2 teams.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we already beat St. Louis on the road. We handled Colorado easily at home. And yeah, like I said, we would be 5 points up in the Pacific if we were in that division. So, but it's the same story that we've talked about in shows past. How the Eastern Conference is so deep, and the Western Conference, they have two good teams, and really after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. So the fact that the Flyers are among the elite teams in the Eastern Conference, which is by far the tougher conference, that gives me a lot of confidence going into the playoffs.
Especially with the division we're in, because it's the toughest division.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. All right, well, you guys have any other points that you want to hit on before we wrap this one up?
No, I think we hit most of them.
All right, so one last thing that we do with every episode, the Rage Room Moment of the Week. Steve, you know what this is all about. Connor, if you haven't listened before, the Rage Room Moment of the Week, basically something that happened within the past week that pissed you off. Just, elaborate on it and tell a funny story if you've got one.
Oh, my God. I'll let Steve go first. I think I'm going to have to think about that one.
All right, Steve, what do you got this time?
Cool. So I went to a funeral today. That's not cool. But at the same time, I literally before everybody was leaving, because we all met in my house, I had to take a shit. So I go to the bathroom and do my business, and then I get a phone call. It's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I just got out of the bathroom." So I was forgotten to be brought along the way to this funeral. I was like, what the fuck?
So wait, they forgot to bring you to the funeral, and then after the funeral, they left you at the bar.
Yes.
That would explain why he's drunk right now.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, Steve, you've had a rough day. I can say that definitely goes as a good Rage Room Moment of the Week. And Connor, you might still be thinking, I'll go with mine right now. And mine is pretty simple. It's the fact that the fucking Rangers, they did beat the Capitals, but they gave up that goal to Ovechkin in the final minute. If they hadn't done that, the Flyers would be sitting clean alone by 1 point. Actually, not right now because the Capitals already played, but if after the last game, the Flyers would have been clean alone by 1 point in first place in the Metropolitan Division. But because of the fact that they wanted to get Zibanejad his fifth goal in overtime and they gave up that tying goal to Ovechkin, that didn't happen. So that's my Rage Room Moment of the Week. Connor, you got anything?
Yeah, I guess for me, I am a active fantasy player, and I have a fantasy hockey team. And our trade deadline just passed on Friday, but the Friday before, I made a trade. We have a late trade deadline, okay? And what I did
is a very late trade deadline.
Exactly. And so what I did is I traded Jonathan Huberdeau in a package deal for Mark Stone. And Mark Stone immediately got hurt and got put week to week as soon as I made the deal. My only saving grace is that since Trocheck got traded, the Florida Panthers cannot score a damn goal. So my saving grace is that Huberdeau has done nothing and has been on the ice. Stone has done nothing for me and has not been on the ice. So that would be that's a pretty rageful moment for me right now.
I hear you on that. I've been in that position plenty of time. I don't do fantasy hockey, but fantasy football, either trading a guy or, dropping someone and picking someone else up off the waiver wire, only to have that person immediately get hurt and then go back to reacquire the person that had before and somebody else already scooped them up. So I've definitely been down that alleyway before. It's no fun if you're a fantasy sports player.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we sign off, if you're looking for something to eat, if you're hungry, if you need to cater to a party, if you're looking for food to eat during the game, look no further than Just Food. They've got two locations, one in Buckingham Green that is located off of York Road in Buckingham. The other location at Delaware Valley College right in New Britain off of 202 Butler Avenue in New Britain. You can reach them by phone at 215-794-3663. That is 215-794-FOOD. They've got all your catering options. They've got plenty of delicious options. Definitely a great place to stop by if you're looking for a bite to eat. Once again, Just Food. And before I close this out, you can find us again on Twitter at Disciples of Ed. You can find our personals. I'm at radio_Rob. Steve, where can we find you?
Right, Schmay324.
And Connor?
at Connor10, TEN.
And Connor, once again, where can we find your Crossing Borders podcast?
Well, I always post them up as soon as they're up on my personal, which is also the Crossing Borders home, at Connor10. And you at Unwrap Sports, they also promote it and push it out for me. And you can basically type in Crossing Borders on anywheres where you listen to podcasts, and you will find it.
And you can find the Disciples of Ed, as we said before, on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Spreaker, SoundCloud. I know I'm missing like 7 of them, but those are the big ones right there. You can find us anywhere you listen to a podcast, and you can find us. We have links posted to each of our shows on Twitter, so you can definitely find us via that. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Disciples of Ed, and we'll be back with another one coming up in the next few days.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.